breaking down Red Raider baseball like only we can. This is the Talkin Baseball Podcast from Double T 97.3 and DoubleTSportsNetwork.com.
Welcome into another episode of Talkin Baseball alongside Jamie Lint. I'm Choice Woodman. This podcast, as usual, brought to you by our friends at Andrus Brothers. Another week, at least it finished on a good note, Jamie, because the overall week, a 1-3 effort from Texas Tech baseball. You lose a couple of close games. You lose one where we've seen it a million times in baseball. Good starting pitching. You run into a really good starting pitcher that day, and he dominates the game. But able to finish on a strong note where it looked like it was slipping away, but the Red Raiders rally late to win the finale against Cincinnati and avoid the sweep. But overall, still much of the same for this Texas Tech baseball team.
Yeah, no doubt. There are a couple areas that are really costing you. First off, starting pitching, right? You play four games this week, and yes, Connor Mohan on Tuesday was really a quote unquote opener, not a starter.
Right.
It's not. He's a reliever that you started and used a bunch of relievers on Tuesday. And he threw fine for you. He did a good job. And yes, Zane Petty gave you a good start yesterday, 6 innings of 3-run ball. But overall, in the 4 games that you play this past week, you only get 14 1/3 innings out of your 4 starters combined, and you give up 14 runs. And it's just really hard to win baseball games when you're digging yourself a big hole. And you know, whether you've been there, right? As a fan of baseball, you tune in to watch your favorite team play, and they give up a couple of runs early in the game. You feel like, oh man, we're in this hole. It's, I hate playing from behind kind of feeling.
Absolutely.
And this team is doing so much of that. Now, on the other side of things, it's not just about the pitching, right? Because you're doing. You continue to look at the numbers with hitting and runners in scoring position, and they're decent, right? They're in the. You're just below 300. You're in the 280s, 270s, which is decent. It's not terrible, but it just feels like in clutch situations you're not coming through nearly enough. You're not putting up crooked numbers when you have an opportunity to do so. You're not getting a 2-out rally going, and then, you see this team with 2 outs, somebody will get on base, and then they'll get a hit. Okay, we got first and third, 2 outs, chance to kind of steal a run here, and you can't get that next big hit that could get you, some early momentum. So It's both sides of the ball. It's really not much the defensive side of things. We did see some miscues on Friday, but not nearly as many as Cincinnati had. So it's both sides of the ball that are not, performing in those situations. And now you're in a situation as well, it kind of feels like right now you're super inconsistent with your bullpen guys. And so what we have, those three things is a recipe for not a lot of wins. And some things have to get figured out. Obviously, you've got some health issues right now as well, and everybody kind of does at this portion of the season. But I'm just an assumption at this point. But it feels like you didn't use Parker Hutera last Sunday. You didn't use him at all this weekend. It feels like he's got to be banged up at this point.
Yeah.
No idea how long before we see him again, but. Probably, I don't think it's too big of a stretch to say if you have Parker Hutera, you win last Sunday, you win Friday.
Yeah.
Because he's going in there in the 9th, and
it would feel like
he's your dude, right? Yeah. So, just really unfortunate timing. Obviously, you hate it for Parker. Hopefully it's not serious and we see him back soon. I have no idea. But at the same time, it's really hurt your team, no doubt.
It's funny you mentioned a few of those things because we've actually got 3 questions from the audience today, and one of those was about Parker Hutera. What exactly is going on with him? Is he hurt, or why isn't he getting used? I think the fair assumption has to be, we're not seeing him really warm up. We're just not seeing him any action at all. So
since last Sunday. He was warming up last Sunday, and again, the timing of what all went down in that final game at Kansas State. If he tells you before the game, I can't go. If he tells you during the top of the 9th, I can't go, when the Red Raiders are hitting, you can get somebody up and ready.
Yeah.
And it felt like they found out at the last possible minute that he couldn't go, and that really hurt you as far as getting somebody in there when things started to spiral out of control in that game on Sunday against Kansas State. So that apparently is when the injury occurred.
Yeah.
Or when he started feeling something.
Right. And I don't believe anybody's asked Coach Tadlock about that. I haven't seen anything in the media, but maybe someone will this week, and we can get maybe a timetable or something like that. But it seems pretty obvious that something's going on there because he's one of your best pitchers and hasn't been used in a little bit. But another one of those questions, this one was from Zach. It says, do we have the most inconsistent pitching staff in the country?
Man, it's crazy. I mean, like the example or the number of times that we've seen guys be really good one game and then really struggle the next, or guys that have really struggled in one game and be really good the next. Okay, for example, I mean, Zach Crotchfeld this week.
Yeah.
Okay, had his worst performance on Tuesday of the year in Frisco, and he's been pretty consistent for you, but really had a rough night on Tuesday. And then he comes back yesterday, and he was phenomenal. Okay. Yeah. And so it's just the ability to put back-to-back or 3 in a row good performances right now from your bullpen guys. It's almost like Coach Tadlock, Coach Gardner have to say, who was good last time, don't use him.
Right.
Let's use somebody who was bad last time because now it's their turn to be good.
That's what it feels like, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of sarcastic, but
I'm somewhat joking there. But it's just you're just not getting a lot of consistency from those guys. And Will Jordan's another one that's been up and down. You kind of expect that from freshmen.
Yeah, that's something from a freshman.
And so it's in some ways more frustrating than other times because you see that the talent is there. Right. You know that the staff is good, but these guys just haven't been able to execute from one outing to the next, and it's made things difficult.
Yeah, I think right now you have maybe 3-4 guys where, as a fan, and I'm speaking from a fan perspective, you see those guys in and you've got confidence in them. I mean, it's Zane Petty's in that conversation right now for me. He goes 6. He gives you a quality start on Sunday. 6 innings, 3 runs allowed.
He's been by far the most consistent pitcher on your team.
Petty's there. I think obviously Jack Siebert's there.
No question.
As he's been probably the best pitcher over the last month or so for you. Parker Hutera would be in that conversation if he's healthy. But you get beyond those names, and then it's a grab bag of what am I going to get this week because you've had some really good stuff. Crotchfeld was great for you, or good for you. You've had some other efforts that have been solid, but then the next time out, it's like, wow, this guy looks like it's a freshman in his first outing.
Yeah, it's just that you can see that there's talent there, and these guys have good stuff. It's just for whatever reason it hasn't. We haven't seen a lot of back-to-back and 3 or 4 times in a row guys being really, really good, and you need guys to bring it consistently because they need to be able to execute time after time again, and it's just not necessarily happened enough for this team. And at one point we talked about the bullpen being one of your strengths, and some of that is that some injuries that you've dealt with as well. Obviously, the Hutera situation. We haven't seen Jackson Burns since the beginning of the season. Okay, and he's been sick. And Lucas Perko, he was a guy that you thought you were going to rely heavily on, and he missed a few weeks. You see him coming back, and it looks like he's getting better and better. And I thought he threw really well on Friday as well. I thought so, yeah. Honestly, that's 2 performances in a row where I thought Perko has looked good. So you wonder if he maybe gets a chance to get back into the starting rotation at some point. And so there's a bunch of guys there. And I think Logan Beavis just had a bad week. I'm hoping that's the case because Logan's been terrific. He's given you a lot of really good outings.
He had probably been in that conversation of guys you could rely on prior to this week.
Yeah, and so he just had a bad week. It happens at times. And so, I think it's just And then the situation with Mac Hewer, I mean, in his health, and that obviously is affecting things as well. And when your starters aren't going deep into games, that means you're using your bullpen more. And so opens up the potential of those guys getting more tired. And so, but what we loved about this team at the beginning of the year is it felt like you had a lot of bullets. You had a lot of weapons down there in the bullpen. But right now, some of those are firing sporadically. I guess that's the best way to say it.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
So a couple more questions. One was from Melissa. It says, why does Tadlock keep going to guys like Trenton Parrish and Johnny Lowe when they've had so many bad outings?
Yeah, I mean, and Lowe's another example, right? I mean, he closes out a game in a midweek game week before and looks awesome, and then came into the game yesterday trying to do the same thing and couldn't get it out, okay? And that just goes to, one performance to the next has not been good. Trenton Parrish had been through a stretch where he was really good early in his outings, and then he wasn't able to kind of close them out when it started to go bad. It would go bad for him. But there's no question it's been a disappointing year for Trenton, and I think what the coaching staff sees is they know how good his stuff is. They know how good he can be. They know how good he was last year at the end of the year, and they're just waiting and hoping. It's the same reason you see a guy like Peyton Schultz keep getting at bats.
Yeah.
Because the coaching staff knows there's talent there. It's just got to click. These guys have, got to find their rhythm, got to find their confidence, whatever. They're not going to get it not playing. And so you try to find spots to use them. Obviously, Trenton struggled again on Friday. And that went, ultimately you get into extra innings because of it, and you lose the game. Mm-hmm. But I think they feel like, hey, we got to have Trenton right if we're going to turn this thing around, and so you have to keep giving him chances.
So the last pitching question, then we'll move on to the week ahead, Jamie, is any movement to the rotation in your eyes? Because Jack Siebert has continued to be really good, and Coach Tadlock's talked about that role out of the bullpen and how important it is, the flexibility of being able to put him in on a Friday or a Saturday or whenever you need him. But you've also seen Tyler Boudreau continue to struggle a little bit. He was decent in game one. He just gave up a lot of bombs, but he really didn't walk a lot of people. He was solid. Mac Hewer just doesn't seem to be right now for whatever reason. So do you see any movement with those guys?
Yeah, and so you ask yourself the question, if you make a change, are you better off? Okay? And so let's say you were to, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put Siebert and we're going to put Perko in the starting rotation.
Yeah.
Okay? Are you better off with those guys there, and are you still able to get something from a Hewer or a Boudreau out of the bullpen, or are you better off with those guys starting and then Perko and Siebert being bullpen guys? Okay, right. Because you don't want it to be a situation of, okay, we're going to push those guys out of the starting rotation, push them out of where they're comfortable. We're going to put these guys in here, and then those two pitchers are not able to be valuable guys out of the bullpen. So you have to weigh the thoughts there of how are we the best. What it all boils down to, Choice, is the guy's got to pitch better. Okay? And in Hewer's situation, he's got to get 100% healthy.
Yeah.
Because it felt like, with him skipping a start and then a quick hook on Friday, that they feel like maybe he's not. Okay, so they're being extra careful with him. So I think it's a good question to ask. I wouldn't be surprised to see one of those guys maybe move into the rotation this week. Okay, but I wouldn't guess you'll see both of them do it.
Right, and I agree with you.
And again, the style that you had on Friday was there. It worked perfectly.
Yeah, you set yourself up to win.
Siebert came in the third inning and was dominant until he handed off in the ninth, right? He was terrific. Gave up one unearned run. Yeah. Okay? It was all set up.
He threw 105 pitches or so,
It worked until your bullpen fell apart in the ninth, okay?
You're right. You're exactly right,
It was eighth and ninth. Okay, whatever.
I think it was the ninth,
Yeah, okay. So anyway, It's a good question. It's one that's bounced around in my head, and I'm sure it's bouncing around in the coaching staff's head. But they just got to figure out what's the best, for the team right now. And again, it really boils down to guys got to perform, right?
Yeah.
Guys got to get healthy, be healthy. Guys got to perform.
That's what it is. And I guess it just feels like you just want to get a good start on Friday. You just want to get off to a win. You've had of your true 3-game series that you've played on Fridays, you've won one Friday game, and this is the Houston one.
And how many series have you won this year?
One series, one weekend series. You won another Friday in Vegas, but of your true 3-game series, I think you're
against one team.
I think you're 1 for 7.
You've
at
won
this
one
point.
series.
Yeah,
win on Friday. It matters.
And that's where it's like you got to find a way to get one on Friday.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that coming up because you play a important home series against Baylor this weekend. Also a road trip to New Mexico. We'll preview those. But first, a word from our friends at Andrus Brothers.
When you want the brand in West Texas roofing, there's only one company to call, Andrus Brothers Roofing. Like our Red Raiders, Andrus Brothers knows that to win, you have to be better than your competition and you have to dominate in all phases. With over 40 years experience, Andrus Brothers has mastered these concepts. So when the high winds and debris damage your roof, there's only one company to call, Andrus Brothers Roofing. Accept no substitutes. Stick with the starters on the ABR winning team. Andrus Brothers Roofing, we nail it every time.
All right, Jamie. So you've got the midweek trip to New Mexico, which is your favorite.
Always.
No sarcasm at all.
Love.
No more Mama Mang sitting there barking, right in your ear anymore, or right in the microphone anymore. But it's still. There's the sitting outside element. There's all of that comes with New Mexico. And then there's the actual games themselves, which, we'll set the over-under at 25 runs tomorrow, right?
You and I have just sat here and talked about a pitching staff that's dealing with some injuries. It's unsure of their starting rotation. His bullpen has been inconsistent.
Oh, man.
Okay? And so let's just call that like a little fire. We got a little campfire. Okay? That's a little campfire. And over here is Albuquerque against the University of New Mexico. And we're just going to call this, I don't know,
kerosene?
a 20-gallon jug of kerosene. Okay? And we're just going to drop this.
Just dump it right on
campfire,
top.
Right?
Oh, man.
Okay, so I guess my point to you is
oh, boy.
Not the best time to go to Albuquerque. Not the best time right now.
There's never a great time to go to Albuquerque, but your
get
point
some hiking in, I guess.
Point is valid.
Yeah, so just not the best time.
Yeah.
You got to get some things figured out. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're a glass half full guy, you're saying, okay, midweek contest against New Mexico, what we're probably going to do is see a bunch of, similar to what we saw on Tuesday,
well,
we're going to see 5, 6, maybe 7 guys get an inning or 2, right? And so maybe this is an opportunity to go out there for 1 inning, get your confidence, get feeling good about things. I would suggest you keep the ball down because the wind's going to blow there and it's going to blow out. So
be a good idea.
Maybe it's an opportunity to get some guys right. So you just you can't go in there worrying about the conditions. You can't go in there worried about the wind blowing and how many runs are usually scored between these two teams. You just got to go in there and say, execute pitches.
And this is a New Mexico team that's been a very mixed bag themselves this year, 16-15 on the season.
They're coming off a 3-game sweep of UNLV. But before that, got swept in 4 against Tarleton.
Yeah.
They've played Arizona, the Big 12, lost 10-0 in that game. So.
Yeah, they also lost this past weekend to Fresno 3 in a row. So this is a team that's hard to figure out. So I think if there's been an opportunity to go grab one in New Mexico, this one's a pretty good one. And you just need these midweeks at this point, if nothing else, to get your baseball team better and get some confidence. So not going to be easy. Really never know what to expect. You can have an 8-run lead that's not safe in Albuquerque. And,
sure isn't.
And we'll find that out. But, of course, that game will be an afternoon game, and you can find it on Double T 97.3 if you're listening on the radio. But the big ones this weekend, really your only back-to-back home series, I think all season long, that you've got. You played 3 against Cincinnati, and then much nicer weather in the forecast against Baylor this weekend. I think it's supposed to hit 90 on Saturday.
Awesome.
So you get 3 against Baylor. This is a team that's coming off of a home series loss to Houston this past weekend, which is a little surprising because that's the team that Tech swept. It's another. It feels like we're on repeat here, but it's another winnable series in the Big 12. But are you going to go win it?
Yeah,
That's the question.
It really is not about the opponent at this point. I mean, truth of the matter is, Choice. Kansas State. I know they had a rough weekend in Stillwater, but you went to Kansas State last weekend, and you had a great chance to take that series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know you got swept. We definitely should have won on Sunday.
Yeah.
Right. And if not for a terrible start on Friday and Saturday, you outplay them for most of the game. The first 2 or 3 innings just cost you, right?
Right.
And so that's one of the better teams in the league. You went there on the road and you had a shot, right? You're not that far off. You're finding ways to beat yourself. You're not finding ways to win. On both sides of the ball. I mean, we can talk all about the collapse on Friday. You had plenty of opportunities to win that game on the offensive side of the ball.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah, there's
with
no
runners
question.
at third and less than 2 outs, and you can't get the run home. First and second, nobody out. You can't execute whether you're trying to bunt or you're trying to drive them in.
How about that? The exact same situation as the TCU weekend where Damian Bravo comes up first and second, nobody out in extra innings, and then Coach Tadlock elects not to bunt this time. And I'm sure there's those out there that are frustrated with that. And it's just
every situation's a little bit different. It is, and you're just not coming through in those situational spots.
That's what it comes down
where
to.
You need
Execution is what it's come down to all year, and you just aren't executing in moments on the mound or in situational hitting.
This team has a small margin for error. Small margin.
Yep.
And if you're not taking advantage offensively of those opportunities that's been given to you, you make that margin so much smaller, right?
Yeah.
And if you are taking advantage of it, you're widening that. You're making that margin a little bit bigger. So those opportunities, you got to come through. You absolutely have to come through. And look at we talked earlier about win on Friday. It means a series win, right? That's for what it's so far this season. Okay, so you play 4 games this week. And the 3 games that you lose, you go a combined 4 for 27 with runners in scoring position. 4 for 27. And the 1 game that you win, you go 8 for 20. Okay? So it's like 148 compared to 400.
Yeah.
If you don't think that's not a huge stat and factors into you winning, hitting with runners in scoring position, you're kidding yourself, right? So when you hit in those situations, when you give yourself a little bit more room, okay, everybody plays with more confidence. You're less tight. And so we can talk about the starting pitching not getting off to great starts, but how about score some runs early, okay, and give yourself some confidence that way.
Sure.
Again, it's both sides of the ball here, right?
It absolutely
and
is.
so that stat is so important. You got to hit in the clutch. And when you're winning, this team's been able to do it. When you're not winning, it's been a huge factor in you losing.
No doubt. So, as usual, you can hear all of the games this week and weekend on Double T 97.3 as the Red Raiders get ready for that matchup with the Baylor Bears and hopefully can turn a few around and maybe get the second Big 12 series win of the season. Jamie, enjoy the nice weather in Albuquerque, and
Can't wait.
we'll do this again next week. That's Jamie Litt. I'm Choice Woodman. You've been listening to Talkin Baseball, brought to you by Double T Sports Network.
Breaking down Red Raider baseball like only we can. This is the Talkin Baseball Podcast from Double T 97.3 and DoubleTSportsNetwork.com.